Welcome back! This isn't a video I expected to make, but as of the filming of this, and not when you're seeing it, but as it's being made, it is July 9th, 2022, and I saw a familiar name trending on Twitter that I thought might be interesting to talk about. One Eric Clapton. It's always a bummer when I see the names of older musical performers trending on Twitter because it usually only means one of two things. Either one, they died, or two, they've done something horrible. Mr. Clapton, unfortunately, has had the honor of trending several times over the last couple years, with every new single he's released, actually. The man is somehow simultaneously going through somewhat of a renaissance and a downward spiral at the same time. The track that's got him trending this time around is his newest release, Pompous Fool. And we will talk about that in a second, but first I want to backtrack a little and get into where the daggers really started to fall for old Eric. As with everything in this last goddamn decade, it all boils down to politics. Woo! I'm gonna need to take me one of these little... Yeah! It all starts in 2020, where Eric Clapton released his first single in a while titled Stand and Deliver, alongside Van Morrison. A not even remotely subtle anti-masking song. The song itself is not particularly biting or poignant. Clapton tackles the subject matter with all the wit and ferocity of a disgruntled old man who's mad that the grocery store won't accept his $off coupon, just because it expired 3 years ago, and is for a different store. But they should honor it anyway, damn it, and he's not gonna leave until you give him his $off. What do you think he is, a slave? Yes, this song absolutely does liken the choice of whether or not to wear a mask in public during a global pandemic to that of being a slave or a free man. Well, shit. Now look, Clapton's in his 70s. An old ex-hippie boomer being annoyed at the prospect of having to do something for the benefit of somebody else is not in itself entirely shocking. And as stated, the song isn't particularly good, and the man himself hasn't really been relevant as an artist since, like, the 90s, so what's with all the hubbub? Who cares? Well, there were a handful of other things that also happened in 2020, as you may remember. You had the Australian bushfires, Kobe Bryant died in that terrible helicopter accident, that was awful. Murder hornets, and there was one other thing, what was it? Oh yeah, mass protests / riots erupting on not just a national but a global scale over the unlawful death of George Floyd at the hands of a police officer. At that time, the latest victim in a long, long line of lives taken unjustly. Not a whole lot from Clapton about that. Nah, man, the minor inconvenience of having to wear a mask that's where the anger should be focused. Which, okay, maybe that's where his priorities lie. He's from the UK, right? So maybe the plight of African Americans throughout the history of the United States and the significance of this moment was lost on him. A little odd, considering that's, pretty much what he based his whole career off of, but, okay. Maybe he just didn't understand exactly what the attitude was here in America at the time, being that he was living across the pond. But, it was big news. I feel like he heard about it. And maybe it wouldn't be unrealistic to say that, given the circumstances, it would be a touch disingenuous to project the themes of slavery and bondage onto himself. Being that he is an incredibly wealthy white man with mansions all over the place and a crazy expensive car collection. I mean, even if you're someone who didn't go for BLM, I think we could admit that this dude acting like he's the real victim here just doesn't feel particularly honest. So is that the whole problem then? Clapton's an anti-masker? That's what the controversy is? That's part of it. That's a little bit. But the reason I bring up the George Floyd protests is that's necessary for the real kicker that we're about to get into. You see, it would be really easy to just strike this up as some old guy who's, a bit single-minded and a little out of touch, and perhaps wasn't the most tactful in his messaging. Just didn't really think about the implications of his lyrics given the racially charged climate. That would be understandable. Unfortunately, all of this is made a tad more suspect given some racially insensitive comments that Clapton had made at a concert back in the 70s. Twitter, being Twitter of course, had these comments ready for action. And by racially insensitive comments, what I mean by that is he straight up asked all the foreigners at the concert to identify themselves and then promptly told them to leave. Get out of his show, get out of his country. Paying concert goers, by the way. People who gave him money to be there. He then continued to go on a long tirade about how much he loved Enoch Powell and how he believed Britain should be a white nation. Peppered throughout this speech was a plentiful use of racial slurs. I'm not going to post or recite his words here for obvious reasons, but you can find them pretty easily. Honestly, I had to look this up because the whole thing is just so jarringly malicious that I did not believe it at first. Like, it really felt like a fake thing that someone just made up to be as horrible as possible and tried to misattribute to him. Because it really is, like, almost cartoonishly spiteful. It's wild. But evidently it's real. Clapton has on numerous occasions apologized for those remarks and has cited heavy drug use and a not great frame of mind as being the main agitator for this incident. It's no secret that Clapton did a shit ton of heroin back in the day, so... He has stated that he is ashamed of those remarks and that they don't make much sense to him, honestly, because of how impactful black culture has been on his life, how many black friends that he has, close friends and loved ones. I mean, the guy made a whole album with B.B. King, who has always been a clear and obvious influence and inspiration on Clapton's playing even from his early days. It really is kind of baffling that he would hold those views. And I think most people would and have been willing to believe that this moment is explained by the copious amounts of drugs and alcohol that he was regularly blitzed on. Not excused, just explained. But man, it really doesn't help your case much when literally the largest demonstration for black justice in American history is taking place, and you not only completely ignore it, but are also actively trying to suggest that you're the one being oppressed here. To sum it up, Clapton releases a very mediocre song that is a bit tone-deaf to the climate of the day, and old comments from his past seem to suggest that things maybe go a bit deeper than just simple ignorance. This really is the crux of the controversy surrounding him at this point, but it's not all of it. Now let me say, I'm not here to tell you what is right or wrong about any of this. I am not here to tell you what side you should or should not be on, what you should or should not think. That's for you to do. You could take care of that. I'm simply explaining that this is what the controversy is. This is what is coming up every time his name starts trending on Twitter. Every time he releases something new and everyone gets to talking about Clapton, this is what keeps coming up. The conversations would steer more towards his stance on anti-masking, anti-vaxxing, anti-lockdown, all that stuff, and less about the racism with each release, but I believe that it's this specific point, it's this perfect shitstorm that has catapulted each release into being its own trending topic of discussion, and why it continues to be a trending topic of discussion nearly 2 years later. So that's the start of it, but it continues. In early 2021, Clapton released yet another single titled The Rebels, once again with the help of Van Morrison. The song decries how so-called acts of rebellion only exist in keyboard wars. There are no rebels in the streets fighting for what's right. They all just hide behind the safety of their computer screens. This song is once again positioning itself as a protest song about, anti-mask, anti-vax, anti-lockdowns, all that stuff. You wouldn't really know it much by listening to the lyrics. Like, if this song had been released in any other point in history, it would just be a song about how the world needs more rebels, which I think most of us could get behind. That sounds fair enough. But Clapton has clarified that the song is specifically calling on rebels to come on out and fight against those vaccines. To be fair, Clapton is fully vaccinated, but he claims to have suffered a pretty severe reaction that left his hands numb for almost 2 weeks, stating that he wasn't sure if he'd actually ever be able to play guitar again. But given that the man was already so vehemently anti-mask, could he possibly have exaggerated his symptoms to justify the anti-vaccination stance that he would inevitably have? I can't say. Honestly, I don't think Rebels is that bad of a song music-wise. It sounds loads better than Stand and Deliver. It's got a proper amount of grit, so you could take it a little more seriously, but I can't imagine I'd pull it up to listen to on its own, compared to some of his earlier works. But of this particular batch that we're talking about, I think it's one of the better ones, music-wise. This is not the case for the next single, This Has Got to Stop, which has the same problem that Stand and Deliver does. It is just severely overselling the victimization aspect, and the commentary is so surface level and uninteresting. The whole music video is basically like, wow, phone bad, TV bad. Like, wow, thanks, I'm pretty sure you're the first artist to ever make that statement, Eric. Once again, this one was also done with Van Morrison, and his name has not been dragged through the mud nearly as much as Clapton's, despite sharing equal credit on the song. This is why I think that despite the controversy being around the anti-mask vaccine stances, I think it does have more to do with the racist remarks, because Clapton's really the one coming under fire with all this. Next out was Heart of a Child. This one does not involve Van Morrison at all. This is just Clapton on his own, and is probably the best of his recent releases. And musically, I think it's one of the more interesting works he's put out in a while. Nice, soft, rhythmic, acoustic song. Pretty solid. Not a whole lot to complain about on this one. That leads us to his latest release, Pompous Fool. Also, again, just Clapton, no Morrison. This song was just shadow dropped on his YouTube channel, and while no official explanation of the song has been given, many fans have theorized that it is specifically about Boris Johnson. Remember, Clapton's from the UK, so all of his anti-this and anti-that attacks were aimed specifically at him. This was slightly suggested by Clapton, as the announcement of the song coincided with the Prime Minister's resignation. I don't know how he would have known that was going to happen. Just seems like a happy coincidence for him. You can find that connection, I suppose. The lyrics sound surface level enough to me. Don't let the overly self-indulgent, self-congratulatory, up-nosed fuckwads coerce you into changing yourself in order to appease them. It's a vague enough statement. I feel it works pretty much anywhere. I don't know that it's specifically meant to be a political statement. But I don't know, like I said, the same could be said for the Rebels if you didn't know better. It's fine. The song's fine. I forgot it almost as soon as I heard it. Seeing this trend on Twitter is what made me want to do the video, because honestly, it is fascinating to me. When this whole controversy started in 2020, I remember thinking to myself, who's really worried about what Eric Clapton has to say? But his name has hit United States top trending discussions with every release of his. While it may be more for infamy than fame at this point, this is easily the most attention Clapton's had in like 30 years. This is potentially the most popular and relevant Eric Clapton will ever be again. I mean, as long as you don't count Old Sock, of course. We were all jamming out to that one, am I right? Truly, there is coin to be had in controversy. Pissing people off seems to be working wonders for him. And I wonder if the people who are diligently attempting to bring him down with every release here realize that they're only bringing him more attention, thus widening his audience. It's wild because none of these songs are really good enough to warrant this type of reaction. If people just didn't feel that need to dogpile on him and bring him down, these songs probably all just would have came and went completely unnoticed, just like Old Sock. But you all shined a big old light on it, and now it's his most popular work in decades. It's so ironic. Don't forget, everyone, you can't spell contention without content. But please tell me what you think of all of this down below. I would say keep it civil, but I already know that if anything in this video has made you feel compelled enough to leave a comment, it ain't gonna be civil. So just go nuts down there, and I'll probably just delete most of you. Please subscribe if you'd like to come back. Thanks for coming back if you're already subscribed. If you like the video, go strum the thumb, upstroke or downstroke, any which way, it's okay. Thanks for coming out, and I'll see you at the next gig.